That was You Should Probably Leave by Haroula Rose, originally written by Chris Stapleton. The new album is called Catch the Light, and I don't usually play covers on this show, at least in terms of the interview section, because I want to get to what the songwriter is thinking, what the songwriter is all about. But I think I learned a lot about you as a filmmaker, a director, an interpreter by listening to that song because you approach it quite a bit differently than Chris did. And when I sit there and I close my eyes and I listen to those words, um, I don't necessarily see someone singing with a band and backup singers. I see someone sort of slumped over a piano in the corner, like you presented it, alone, you know, defeated, resigned to what's going to happen. So tell me how you go about whether it's covering a song or directing something for a script, how you go about taking someone else's art and turning it into your own.
Um, that's a great question. I think with that song, I remember the first time I heard it, thinking to myself that that really is such a, it can be a universal feeling. I think where someone inspires a revealing feeling in you and you don't quite know what to do with it, or the inevitable like chemistry of whatever that relationship is can be overwhelming. And I just remember hearing that song and thinking it felt like it should be naked and sparse and allow the person listening to like insert themselves into it. And I love Chris Stapleton's version, but I felt like, I don't know, for some reason, ever since I first heard it, it just made sense to me as like this ballad that's like very sparse and turning it on its head a little bit. So those are my favorite covers, because I don't really love to do covers either. Because I'm like, okay, if I love a cover, it's chances are it's going to be perfect already. So why mess with it? Like remakes of movies, like why? But sometimes it's worth it if it is like a whole new interpretation that's fresh and that makes you think of all those words differently. So that's kind of how I felt about that song. And in taking someone else's story or book or anything and turning it into another art form, I think it is the same principle of like making it really personal. And then if you make it really personal for yourself, then I think you can do that for other people too, because they're hearing it in this whole new way, or they're seeing this book or this story in a whole new way too. So it presents more freedom for the story to live on eternally through other people's interpretation of it.
Yeah, I always have this cover rule where I don't know how to exactly explain it, but I usually love Bob Dylan covers
Mm-hmm.
because he's this great songwriter, but not necessarily the strongest singer. And other people can bring out what he might not be able to. But
Yeah.
it's a brave move to take on a song by a vocalist like Chris Stapleton.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I know I love it.
kudos.
And I love his songwriting. I'm definitely a huge fan of his. And so it was fun to do, and like hearing people's response to it. Because yeah, it was sort of shocking that there weren't more versions of it, but that also made it kind of exciting in a way, because it's like, okay, maybe this is, gonna offer a whole other perspective. So that, yeah, it was fun to make.
Um, I also I watched your music videos. You've directed a few, and the swimming song really stands out to me. Tell me about the inspiration behind what was kind of a wild music video with retro-looking footage, naked people swimming. I mean, it it packed everything.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than swimming naked, right? I mean, I think that's probably just like some primordial thing of like we were all at some point swimming inside of, in utero. Maybe it like calls to mind all this dreamlike state of before we even knew who we were. But yeah, I could talk about that for a long time, but I think basically I wanted to make a video that was like all this old found footage and retro stuff that feels very much still universal, like someone doing something that feels a little like naughty or like off the beaten path. Like people have been doing that forever. And so it was really fun to see all of that, like just to see how people used to be with one another and that we think might still be so fresh or risque. Well, people have been doing that forever.
So I'm gonna play that song, but to close out your interview, I'm going to ask you to pick a song, any song, as long as it's by another artist. And I give everyone a little category. And for you, it is a song by another artist you really wish you could have done the music video for.
Oh, okay. This is a really good question. I would say it's a Peter Gabriel song that I love called Here Comes the Flood.
And what would that music video look like?
Well, I think it would be, I would love if I had endless resources to do that video. I think it would be something that involved some like animation and it would be inspired by our subconscious, like by dream life and what it would mean to go through something really dark and also beautiful, like a kind of rebirth. And it would be really cool to like show what that transformation is, like when you see how gross and putrid a caterpillar like turning into a butterfly is like not an easy process. It's like a complex thing. Or yeah, I was just like reading about frogs because there were so many frogs where I was just now. And like the process of like becoming from the water to something that lives on land. It's like a little bit intense and grotesque. And so I would want to take a song that presents that. And I feel like that song feels pretty provocative in that way to me.
All right. Well, you might not have endless resources, but our listeners do have endless resources in their imagination. So as you're listening to the swimming song, just think swimming naked. And when you are listening to Here Comes the Flood, think about rebirth, frogs, caterpillars, butterflies.
Yeah, cool.
Haroula Rose, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's really nice to meet you in real life.
Catch the Light is the new album, and this one not on that album, but still plenty worthy of checking out the rest of the catalog of the swimming song.